I always thought Tuesdays were the most forgettable day of the week. Just another routine morning, nothing special, nothing out of the ordinary. I woke up early, made myself a cup of coffee, and, as usual, forgot to add sugar, making it bitter as hell. My two kids, Abby and Tyler, were already arguing over who got to sit up front on the way to school, their voices filling the kitchen before I had even taken a full sip of coffee. It was the same chaos every morning. Pack lunches, grab backpacks, hustle out the door, make sure nobody forgot anything. Just another day in the life of a regular dad. By the time I pulled into the school's drop-off lane, I was running just on time. One more minute and we'd be flirting with a tardy slip. The parking lot was full of yellow buses, tired-looking teachers, and parents waving their kids off before speeding toward their own daily grind. I spotted him standing near the front entrance, Coach Reynolds. He was the fifth-grade teacher and the head soccer coach. The kids liked him well enough, and my wife, Melissa, had mentioned more than once that he was great with kids. I never paid much attention to him. Just another face at the school, another name on the list of people who helped educate my kids. He gave me a nod as I drove off, the kind of polite acknowledgement you exchange with someone you barely know. Then I went to work and everything changed. The office was the usual mess of ringing phones, emails, and meetings that dragged on longer than they needed to. By lunchtime, I finally had a moment to breathe. I grabbed my sandwich, leaned back in my chair, and mindlessly scrolled through my phone. News, sports scores, nothing important, until a text notification popped up from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but then I saw the preview. I cannot stop thinking about last night. My brows pulled together as I tapped the message open. I miss you already. When can I see you again? My stomach clenched. Wrong number, obviously. Had to be, but something about it made me uneasy. The words weren't casual. They were too personal, too intimate. I scrolled up, checking if there were any previous texts, but there was nothing. Just this one, out of the blue. Before I could overthink it, another message came through. Sorry, babe. That was not meant for you. Forget you saw it. I sat up straighter. A mistake. That was what they were trying to call it. But it did not feel like a mistake. It felt like a cover-up. My pulse started to pick up. I did not recognize the number, and my gut told me I needed to find out who it belonged to. I copied the number and pasted it into my contacts. My breath caught when my phone automatically matched it to an existing contact. Coach Reynolds. For a moment, I just stared at the screen, hoping I had read it wrong. Maybe it was some weird glitch. Maybe there was a logical explanation. But when I checked again, the name was still there, staring back at me. I sat frozen, my half-eaten sandwich forgotten on the desk. Coach Reynolds, the same guy who coached Tyler's soccer team. The same guy who had been teaching at the school for years. The same guy who had shaken my hand at parent-teacher night and said, "You have got a great family." Now he was sending messages like this. To my wife. A cold wave passed through me. My first thought was denial. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe he had the wrong number saved. Maybe, God, maybe there was some ridiculous explanation that would make sense. But the second text had killed that hope. Forget you saw it. He knew exactly who he had sent it to. And he knew he had screwed up. I leaned back in my chair, trying to steady my breathing. The office noise faded to the background. Phones ringing, people talking, keyboards clicking. I barely noticed any of it. My brain was running through every moment, every interaction, every time Melissa had mentioned Coach Reynolds' name. Had I missed something? Were there signs? A few memories flashed in my head. Times she had brought up his name in casual conversation. That one time I had walked into the living room late at night, and she had quickly put her phone down. I had thought nothing of it at the time. I clenched my jaw. I was a fool. I needed answers. Proof. Something that would either confirm my worst suspicions or let me breathe again. Because right now, I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, staring into something I didn't want to see. I stood up from my desk and grabbed my keys. Need some air, I muttered to my coworker, barely listening to their response. I walked out to my car and slid into the driver's seat, gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. I should have waited, thought it through. But I couldn't. I was going home, and I was getting the truth. Melissa's car was in the driveway when I pulled up. I sat in my truck for a minute, gripping the wheel, staring at the house. From the outside, everything looked the same. White siding, blue shutters, the wind chime she loved so much swaying gently in the breeze. It looked like home. It looked safe, but I knew better. The truth had been sitting in my inbox, flashing across my screen like a warning sign I had never expected to see. I miss you already. When can I see you again? And I had learned exactly who it was meant for. I turned off the engine, but I didn't get out right away. Instead, I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I needed to be smart about this. I couldn't just storm in and start throwing accusations around. If I was wrong, God, if I was wrong, I could destroy everything for nothing. And if I was right, well, I needed to be damn sure before I let this unravel. I stepped inside, shutting the door quietly behind me. The air smelled like fresh coffee, and I could hear the soft, rhythmic sound of fingers typing on a keyboard. Melissa was in her office, working. Just another normal day. Except it wasn't. I stood there for a second, listening. She had no idea I was home early. No idea that I had seen something I was never supposed to see. Part of me wanted to march down that hallway, push open the door, and demand an explanation. But I knew how that would go. Melissa was sharp. She would find a way to spin it, to make me feel like I was the one being unreasonable. No, if I wanted the truth, I had to play this right. I went to the kitchen and sat down at the table, pulling out my phone. My fingers hovered over the screen, debating my next move. Finally, I decided to go straight to the source. I typed out a text and hit send. Who was that message meant for? The seconds dragged as I waited, my heartbeat hammering in my chest. I stared at the screen like it held all the answers, willing him to reply. A minute later, my phone buzzed. I am sorry. I did not mean for you to see that. It will not happen again. I let out a slow breath, reading it twice. He wasn't denying it. He wasn't even trying to come up with some excuse. He just wanted me to drop it. Not good enough. Who was it for? This time, the response was almost immediate. It is not what you think. I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. Not what I think. What the hell was that supposed to mean? It was exactly what I thought. My gut had been screaming at me since I saw his name pop up. I was about to fire back when I heard footsteps. Melissa was coming. I locked my phone and slid it into my pocket just as she stepped into the doorway. She smiled when she saw me, that same easy, familiar smile she always gave. Hey, you were home early. Everything okay? I forced myself to smile back, even though my jaw felt tight. Yeah, just needed a break. She nodded, turning toward the coffee pot and pouring herself a cup. Everything about her was so damn normal, so routine, that it made my stomach twist. How? How could someone lie so well, act so calm? How could she stand there, sipping her coffee, like there wasn't another man texting her things that should have been meant for me? Did you eat lunch? She asked over her shoulder. I shook my head. Wasn't hungry. She turned, frowning. Are you feeling all right? I forced a nod, even though my mind was spinning. I wanted to read her face, to catch a flicker of something, guilt, fear, hesitation. But there was nothing. She was steady, collected, and that only made me more uneasy. The kids will be home soon, she said, leaning against the counter. Abby has soccer practice, and Tyler has a book report due tomorrow. I was thinking we could just grab takeout tonight. Something easy. I nodded automatically, barely processing her words. My mind was too busy rewinding, replaying moments from the past few months. Had she been distant? Had she hidden her phone more often? Had I missed the signs because I'd been too focused on work, on keeping things running smoothly? She walked over, resting a hand on my shoulder. You sure you're okay? I met her eyes, searching for something, anything, that would tell me she was hiding something. But she held my gaze without flinching. And maybe that was the most unsettling part. I forced a small smile. Yeah, just tired. She squeezed my shoulder before pulling away. Go lie down for a bit. I will handle things until dinner. I watched her walk back down the hall, her steps light and unbothered. Like nothing was wrong. Like she had nothing to hide. The second she disappeared into her office, I pulled my phone out of my pocket. Still nothing from Coach Reynolds. I clenched my jaw, staring at his last message. He was dodging me, hoping I would let it drop. But I wasn't letting this go. Something was happening, something that had been happening for a while, and if I did not get to the bottom of it, it was going to tear me apart from the inside out. I needed answers. I was going to get them. I pushed back from the kitchen table, my chair scraping against the hardwood as I made my way down the hall. My legs felt stiff, my body running on adrenaline and instinct rather than thought. I had to be careful. I had to be smart. Locking the bedroom door behind me, I sat on the edge of the bed, phone clutched in my hand. My fingers hovered over the screen, debating my next move. The pit in my stomach was growing, a sinking weight that told me I already knew the answer. I just needed proof. I took a slow breath. No more second-guessing. No more hoping for a mistake or misunderstanding. If she had nothing to hide, then I had nothing to find. I slid my phone into my pocket and slipped back out of the room, careful not to make a sound. The steady click-clack of a keyboard echoed from Lisa's home office, her usual rhythm when she was deep in work. That gave me a window, small but enough. Her phone was exactly where I expected it to be, sitting on the coffee table like it had been left there without a second thought. I stared at it for a moment, the way someone might stare at a ticking bomb, knowing that once they touched it, everything would change. Then I picked it up. The screen lit up, and for a second, I hesitated. But that memory, his text, his name, her silence, pushed me forward. I knew the passcode. She never changed it. As soon as I unlocked it, my eyes moved straight to her messages. I scrolled past the usual ones, the grocery list with her sister, a group chat with the soccer moms, reminders about upcoming school events. All perfectly normal, all perfectly routine, until I saw his name. Mark Reynolds. The message thread looked innocent at first. Short conversations about soccer practice, reminders about school paperwork. But as I scrolled further, I felt my pulse pick up. The tone shifted. "You looked amazing at the game today." I swallowed, my grip tightening on the phone. Not exactly damning, but wrong in a way that made my skin crawl. I scrolled further. "Wish I could have stayed longer after practice. Seeing you is the best part of my day. You're making me blush, haha. I shouldn't be smiling at my phone like this." I clenched my jaw. That was Lisa's response. Playful, flirty, comfortable, like they had done this dance before. I scrolled faster. "I think about you all the time." And then, "Last night was incredible. I haven't felt that alive in years." My breath hitched, my stomach twisting so hard I thought I might be sick. My eyes locked on those words, those exact words, staring back at me in black and white. Last night. I forced myself to think. What was she doing last night? Working late, she said. Some deadline she had to meet. She came home just after 10, kissed me lightly on the cheek, and went straight to bed like it was any other night. But it wasn't. I dropped the phone onto the couch, running a hand down my face as nausea crawled up my throat. I had told myself, maybe it's just emotional, maybe it hasn't gone that far. I wasn't naive anymore. My hand shook, but I forced myself to keep going. I checked her call log. There he was again. Mark Reynolds. Calls. Recent ones. A lot of them. One at 9:47 p.m. last night, right when she should have been at work. I clenched my fists, my breathing uneven. She hadn't been working. She had been with him. The realization felt like a punch to the ribs, like the air had been ripped from my lungs. I should have been furious. I was. But more than that, I felt cold. A deep, sinking cold that numbed everything else. Because now I knew. And the worst part? She had walked into this house, kissed me goodnight, and slept next to me like nothing had happened. I wanted to smash something. I wanted to yell, to make her see the damage she had done. But that wouldn't fix this. And it sure as hell wouldn't give me the upper hand. I needed a plan. Slowly, carefully, I placed her phone back exactly where I'd found it. If she noticed anything out of place, she'd get suspicious. She'd start covering her tracks, making excuses. I couldn't let that happen. I walked back to the bedroom, shutting the door behind me, my mind racing. I pulled out my own phone and stared at Mark Reynolds' contact. My thumb hovered over the call button. But then I stopped myself. No, not yet. Confronting him now would be playing into his hands. He'd lie, make excuses, try to twist things in his favor. If I was going to take him down, I needed to be smarter. And Lisa, she had no idea I knew. I needed to hear it from her, face to face. A noise outside the bedroom pulled me from my thoughts. The front door opened, and the familiar sounds of home filled the air. The kids were back. I heard Abby drop her backpack onto the floor, Tyler's voice chattering excitedly about something that had happened at school. And then Lisa, Her voice was warm, bright, like nothing was wrong, like she hadn't just ripped our family apart. I leaned against the bedroom door, listening. She kissed them on the forehead, asked about their day, promised them takeout for dinner. Like she was the perfect mother, the perfect wife. But I knew the truth now, and she had no idea that the man she had lied to, the man she had betrayed, was about to turn her world upside down. I listened as Lisa called out from the kitchen. "Dinner in an hour." Her voice was light, casual, like nothing had changed, like she had not spent last night with another man. She didn't come looking for me, which meant she believed my lie about needing rest. Good. Let her think I was clueless. I sat up, grabbed my laptop from the nightstand, and got to work. If she was going to keep secrets, then I was going to uncover them. The first thing I checked was the family's shared calendar. Lisa used it religiously, marking down appointments, school events, and social outings. I scrolled through the past few months, searching for gaps, inconsistencies, unexplained trips. It didn't take long. There they were, multiple evenings blocked off as work meetings or yoga class. Yoga. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. She had begged me to pay for that overpriced membership. Said it was her way of finding balance after the stress of motherhood. She talked about how important it was to prioritize herself, how I would never understand the mental load she carried. I had believed her. I had encouraged her. Meanwhile, she had been using it as a cover for whatever the hell was going on between her and Mark Randall. I clenched my jaw and forced myself to keep looking. My next stop was her email. Most of it was harmless. Receipts, newsletters, confirmations for parent-teacher conferences. Nothing jumped out, but that didn't mean there wasn't more hidden somewhere. Lisa was careful, but no one covers their tracks perfectly. Just then, I heard her footsteps approaching. Damn it. I closed the laptop and shoved it onto the nightstand, barely getting back under the covers before she knocked on the door. "You feeling any better?" I swallowed, keeping my voice steady. "Yeah, just needed to rest." There was a pause. Then she said, "Dinner's almost ready." Her voice was gentle, like she actually cared. Then her footsteps faded down the hall. I exhaled slowly, staring up at the ceiling. Tonight, I would sit through dinner, pretend everything was fine, and play the role of the clueless husband. But once the kids were in bed, the pretending would end. I sat at the table, forcing myself to eat, nodding at all the right moments, smiling just enough to keep Lisa from sensing anything was wrong. Emily chattered about her science project, Jacob grumbled about his math homework, and Lisa played the part of the loving mother, reminding them about chores, school, and the weekend trip we had planned. She laughed. She smiled. And I felt sick. She passed me the breadbasket like we were any other couple, in any other home, living any other normal night. And for a second, just a second, I almost let myself fall into the lie. Almost. But then I looked at her again, really looked at her. And all I saw was deception. Dinner dragged on, every second stretching like an eternity. But I kept my face neutral, controlled. I didn't speak much. I didn't need to. I was saving my words for later. Once the kids had eaten, Lisa sent them upstairs to get ready for bed. I helped clear the table, needing something, anything, to keep my hands busy. She moved around the kitchen, humming softly as she rinsed the plates. The same way she had hummed a week ago, a month ago, last night, like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. I knew, and she had no idea. Once the kitchen was clean and the house was quiet, I followed Lisa into the living room. She curled up on the couch, scrolling through her phone, completely unaware that I had already been through it. I stood in the doorway, watching her. My wife, the mother of my children, the woman I had trusted with everything. Liar. I clenched my fists at my sides, feeling the heat rise in my chest. The storm was here. And Lisa? Lisa had nowhere to run. My voice cut through the room like a knife. "Lisa." She looked up, startled by my tone. "Yeah." I didn't move. I didn't blink. "We need to talk." And just like that, her world was about to come crashing down. Her expression shifted the second she saw my face. Concern, confusion, and something else. A flicker of fear. "Is everything okay?" I did not answer. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and swiped to the screenshot of the messages Mr. Randall had sent me earlier. Cold, clear, undeniable. I held the screen out to her, my hand steady despite the storm raging inside me. Explain this. Lisa hesitated before taking the phone, her fingers tightening around it like she was holding a live grenade. Her eyes darted across the screen, scanning the words that had already ripped our life apart. Her face paled. For a long moment, she said nothing. I watched as she tried to process, as if staring long enough would make the words rearrange themselves into something innocent. When she finally looked up, her lips parted, but no sound came out. "Who was the message for, Lisa?" I asked, my voice calm, but sharp enough to cut through steel. She shook her head. "It's not what you think." There it was. The first line of defense. Denial. I let out a bitter laugh, one that held no humor. "Do not insult me." My voice was low, steady. "Dangerous. I know it was meant for you. I know you have been talking to him." Her grip on the phone tightened, her knuckles turning white. "Mark and I." She stopped herself, like saying his name out loud would make it too real. "We were just talking." It did not mean anything. Talking. I took a slow step toward her. "That is what you call this." I gestured toward the phone, toward the words that made my stomach churn. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like a hell of a lot more than just talking. Her eyes welled with tears, but I did not let them shake me. I had seen her cry before, during fights, funerals, bad movies. This was different. These were not tears of guilt. These were tears of getting caught. "I swear," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Nothing happened. I know how it looks, but it was just texts. I was lonely, okay?" I cut her off. "Lonely?" My laugh was hollow. "That is the excuse you are going with? We have 2 kids, a home, a life we built together, and you're lonely." I shook my head, disbelief laced with fury. "Do you even hear yourself?" She wiped at her tears with her sleeve, her shoulders trembling, but I did not move to comfort her. I couldn't. The image of her and Randall, the sneaking, the texts, the secrets, was burned into my mind like a scar that would never heal. "Did you sleep with him?" I asked, my voice flat. She gasped like the question physically hurt. "No," she said quickly. Too quickly. "I swear I didn't." I stared at her, watching her closely, looking for the truth, looking for the lie. All I saw was a woman backed into a corner, desperate to salvage whatever was left. "You expect me to believe that?" I asked. "After everything I have seen? After the lies you have already told?" Her breath came in sharp, uneven bursts. "I made a mistake." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "But it was not what you think. It never went that far." I folded my arms, the silence between us thick and suffocating. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to think this had not gone past words. But my gut told me there was more. "Then explain the messages." My voice was stone. "Explain why he's talking about last night. Why he cannot stop thinking about you." Lisa opened her mouth, then shut it again. The hesitation was louder than any confession. "I do not know," she finally said, her voice fragile, cracking under the weight of her own deception. "It was a mistake. I got caught up in something I shouldn't have. But it is over now. I ended it." I laughed, sharp and bitter. "You ended it?" I stepped closer. "Before or after he accidentally sent me a message meant for you?" She flinched. She knew. She knew I was right. "You were never going to end it, were you?" My voice was ice. "If he had not messed up, you would still be sneaking around. Still lying. Still texting him." The dam broke. Lisa buried her face in her hands, sobbing, loud, uncontrollable, desperate. But I felt nothing. I turned away, my fists clenched at my sides, drowning in a storm of anger, disgust, betrayal. I needed air. Space. Something to stop me from saying something I could never take back. Without a word, I walked to the door, grabbed my coat, and stepped out into the cold night air. Lisa's cries echoed behind me, but I did not look back. I did not feel sorry. I did not feel anything at all. The truth was out now. But the war? The war was just beginning. The cold night air stung my skin, but I barely noticed. My mind was a storm of unanswered questions, a whirlwind of thoughts I couldn't slow down. The houses lining the street were quiet, warm, untouched by the wreckage inside my head. I kept walking. Each step felt heavier than the last. Lisa's voice, her trembling excuses, the way her eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape. It all replayed in my head on an endless loop. I didn't believe her. I couldn't. Not after what I had seen, what I had heard. She called a mistake. But mistakes are accidents. This was a choice. At some point, I realized I had wandered into the small park where I used to take the kids when they were younger. The swings swayed lazily in the breeze, their metal chains creaking softly in the quiet night. Empty, lonely, just like I felt now. I sank onto a bench, my elbows on my knees, staring at the ground. And then I pulled out my phone. Mark Randall. The name glared back at me from the screen, taunting me. My thumb hovered over the call button, the temptation stronger than ever. What would I even say? What would he possibly say that would make this better? Nothing. But it would feel good to hear him squirm. I hit call. The line rang once, twice, 3 times. Then finally, hello. His voice was cautious, like he already knew who it was. I let the silence stretch between us, my grip tightening around the phone. We need to talk. A long pause, then a shaky breath on the other end. Look, man, I didn't mean for things to get this far. I didn't want to hurt you or your family. I laughed, the sound cold and hollow. Funny how you say that after you have already done it. I swear, it wasn't supposed to happen, he rushed on, desperation seeping into his words. Lisa and we didn't plan this. It wasn't like that. I clenched my jaw. Then tell me what it was like, Randall. My voice was sharp, unwavering. Explain to me how you went from being my kid's teacher to sneaking around with my wife. Silence. I could almost hear him scrambling for an excuse. Finally, he sighed. It started with the school meetings. His voice was quieter now, almost guilty. We talk a lot about the kids, and then it just turned into something else. I let those words settle in, my knuckles turning white as I clenched my fist. You didn't mean for it to happen. I repeated, my voice dangerously calm. But you didn't stop it, either. Did you? More silence. Then another sigh. No, he admitted. I didn't. There it was. The truth. The final nail in the coffin. I leaned back against the bench, staring up at the sky. The stars twinkled above me, distant and indifferent. Like they didn't care that my entire world had just imploded. And why would they? This wasn't some grand tragedy. It was just another story of betrayal. Another man losing everything to a woman he thought he knew. I exhaled sharply, closing my eyes for a brief second. Then I asked the question that had been burning in my chest since the second I saw that damn message. When? Mark hesitated. Too long. When did you end it, Randall? His voice cracked. Last week. I felt my entire body go still. Last week. That meant while I was kissing my wife goodnight, she was still texting him. While I was planning our future, she was spending her nights missing him. I swallowed hard, forcing down the anger rising in my throat. You realize it is too late for that, right? I know, he whispered. Another long silence. And then, without another word, I hung up. I shoved my phone back into my pocket, my breath coming out in sharp, uneven bursts. The confrontation hadn't given me the satisfaction I wanted. It didn't fix anything. It just made it real. More real than it had ever been before. I didn't know how long I sat there before I finally stood up and made my way back home. The house was dark except for the warm glow of the living room lamp. I stepped inside, shutting the door quietly behind me. Lisa was waiting for me. She sat curled up on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, her face pale and blotchy from crying. She looked up the second she heard me, her lips parting slightly. Relief? Maybe? Fear? I couldn't tell. Where did you go? She asked softly. I shrugged off my coat, my expression unreadable. Out. She wiped her eyes and sat up straighter. Her voice broke. I thought you weren't coming back. I didn't respond, because a part of me hadn't. A part of me had stayed on that park bench. A part of me was still standing in the middle of that street, wondering if I should turn around and leave it all behind. Lisa stood slowly, clutching the blanket like it was the only thing holding her together. Please, she whispered. Just talk to me. We can fix this. I held up a hand. She stopped. Good. She should be afraid of what I was going to say next. Fix it. I repeated, my voice flat. How do you expect me to fix something that is already broken? Her eyes filled with fresh tears. I love you, she whispered. I made a mistake, but I never stopped loving you. You have to believe me. I just stared at her, The woman I had built a life with. The woman I had trusted. And the woman who had betrayed me. Love. I laughed softly, shaking my head. Love isn't supposed to feel like this, Lisa. It's not supposed to come with secrets and lies. Her shoulders shook as she sobbed, covering her face with her hands. And for the first time, I felt nothing. No anger. No sadness. No pity. Just emptiness. I turned away, heading toward the stairs without another word. Because this conversation wasn't over. It was just the beginning. I need time. The words barely made it out of my mouth, my voice raw, barely above a whisper. Lisa dropped her hands from her tear-streaked face, staring at me with desperation. What does that mean? Are you leaving? I let out a slow breath, my hands tightening in a fist at my sides. I don't know, but I can't sit here and pretend like nothing happened. She nodded, almost like she understood, but the pain in her eyes was unmistakable. Please don't shut me out completely. We can get through this. For the kids. I didn't answer. Instead, I turned and walked upstairs, straight to the guest room. I couldn't be near her. Not tonight. Maybe not for a long time. The bed was cold. The room unfamiliar. But at least I could breathe in here. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling. Could I ever trust her again? I didn't have an answer. But I knew one thing. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The house felt different. Quieter. Heavier. I avoided Lisa, heading straight to the kitchen for coffee. I could hear the kids chatting at the table, oblivious to the tension in the air. They had no idea their mother had just shattered our world. Lisa sat in the living room, scrolling through her phone like it was a lifeline. I watched her from the corner of my eye. Was she texting him? The thought gnawed at me. Even after everything, was she still in contact with Randall? After dropping the kids off at school, I circled back home. Lisa was gone, probably out running errands. Or so she'd claim. I went straight to her office, my heart hammering as I opened her laptop. If she was still hiding something, I was going to find it. I started searching, checking old emails, messages, anything she hadn't deleted. And that is when I found it. A private folder. I opened it, my hands shaking as I scrolled through what she had hidden. Messages, pictures, photos of her and Randall at a cafe. A few calendar invites labeled private meetings. But it was the last file that made my stomach turn. A photo of them together. Close. Too close. And just like that, any doubt I had was gone. This wasn't just an emotional affair. It had been physical. Lisa had looked me in the eyes last night and lied. I slammed the laptop shut, my chest rising and falling as the reality sank in. She didn't tell me the truth because she was scared. She didn't tell me the truth because she still loved me. She lied because she thought she could get away with it. The rage I'd been holding back finally exploded inside me. She thought this was over? Not yet. Not until I made sure they both regretted ever betraying me. When Lisa came home, I was waiting. I sat at the kitchen table, her laptop open in front of me, the screen displaying every single message, every single picture, every single lie. The second she walked in, she froze. Her eyes flicked to the laptop. She knew. The color drained from her face. Sit. My voice didn't even sound like my own. Cold. Unrecognizable. She moved like a puppet, mechanical, lowering herself into the chair across from me. Her hands trembled as she clasped them on the table. You lied again. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Last night, you swore it wasn't physical. I gestured toward the screen. But this tells a different story. Tears streamed down her face, but I felt nothing. I didn't know how to tell you, she stammered. I was scared. Scared of what? I asked. That I'd find out the truth? Or that I'd finally see you for who you really are? Her sobs grew louder, but I pressed on. When did it start? How long have you been lying to me? She squeezed her eyes shut, shaking her head. 6 months. 6 months. I leaned forward, my hands gripping the edge of the table, so hard my knuckles turned white. You didn't end it because you wanted to, did you? You ended it because you got caught. Her silence was my answer. You didn't just betray me. I continued, my voice steady but full of venom. You betrayed our family. Our kids. She reached for my hand. I pulled away. I'll do anything to fix this, she pleaded. Please, don't throw away everything we've built. I let out a bitter laugh. You already threw it away, Lisa. I'm just picking up the pieces. I stood up. She jumped up after me, panic flashing across her face. Where are you going? I didn't answer. I walked upstairs, grabbed a bag, and threw what I needed inside. When I came back down, she was standing in the doorway, blocking my path. Her voice cracked. Please, don't leave. We can work through this. I stared at her, the woman I had loved, the woman I had built a life with, the woman who had burned it all to the ground. You worked through it with him, I said, stepping past her. Now, you'll live with the consequences. She didn't follow me. She didn't call out my name. Because she knew. She had lost me. I stepped outside. The cold air hit me like a slap, but this time I welcomed it. It was sharp, biting, honest, just like the truth I had uncovered. As I pulled out of the driveway, I glanced at the rearview mirror one last time. Lisa stood in the doorway, her arms wrapped around herself, her silhouette barely visible in the dim porch light. She looked small, but I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no regret, just freedom. Because this wasn't just an ending. It was the beginning of something new, something on my terms. And neither Lisa nor Randall would escape unscathed.